Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.
Hello, John.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody.
Gathered you here today.
Oh, is this an intervention?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do I have a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. I'm not even sure. Is it about the electric car? Is it about too many cars?
Well, frankly, you went from a Euro trash to a Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of afraid there might be a Rivian in your future.
Wow, have you been looking at my browser history? Oh, man.
And you went on a 5-minute talk earlier, rant, about how Dorman control arms maybe aren't the same as Napa control arms.
But that's
and the
true.
intricacies between them.
Well, it's not even that they're not the same, but it's that the aftermarket
Mm-hmm.
versus actual cars parts, which we need to get into because, damn it, this is a problem. But not now.
Mm-hmm.
To start,
If you put if you put Dorman control arms on your GD, is it a Subaru anymore?
Or is it now a American car?
Made in China.
Is that where they're made?
I'm
Probably.
sure.
Is
they're
it now a
gonna get
Chinese car?
everything's been in China. Which leads into
Is
the
it a muscle
core
car?
question. Is it a muscle car?
If you have parts store parts on it.
Well,
no joke. Because of time constraints, I once made the PCV system on a Subaru rally car out of those like little valve cover breathers that you get at the parts store,
Sure,
which is probably about as close to making a muscle car out of a Subaru as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
I've run GoPed, like the scooters with motors on them.
Yeah.
I've run a GoPed air filter as a fuel tank breather before.
Sure.
Which I think makes my car sidewalk legal.
Interesting. Okay. First,
What episode is it?
well, okay. Welcome back to the Flatiron Syndicate podcast. Everybody, we've got Jeremy and Tasso here in the shop. What was your question?
I don't remember.
Do you remember?
Just now? What
Just
episode
now?
is it?
Oh, what episode? Yes.
Yeah.
This is episode number
You
159.
just get a Mustang. It's sidewalk legal from the factory.
There we go.
Oh. Ouch.
Is a GR Subaru
That's
a
right.
Mustang with too many drive shafts?
Oh, man. Okay, what are we talking about? Here's the question that I proposed to the guys for the topic of the podcast today. The question is related to Subaru's newest revealed Uber car, Project Midnight, that Scott Speed has driven around, I guess, up Goodwood and then at a time attack event in California. Velocity Invitational, I think?
Yeah, at Sonoma.
Yeah.
Sonoma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is Project Midnight a Subaru? So obviously it's a Subaru project and all that, but is it actually a Subaru? And we'll lump into this whole category the Family Huckster and the Airslayer as well, because
And their rally car.
well, and then the rally car. Well, the rally cars, the current area rally cars are an interesting comparison, and I would say that they're more Subaru than the other three. But that's the fundamental question that I threw out, which is why you guys have been peppering me with all these interesting questions.
So first, what lower control arms are the best ones to get from Napa?
All right. Well, all right.
hold on.
Why are we talking about this?
We're getting interrupted.
Okay. So where this comes from is Subaru has apparently discontinued all of the steel GD front control arms, which are kind of a wear item for rally cars. And the aluminum ones are still available, and even in the aftermarket, the aluminum arms are widely available. And there's pluses and minuses to both sides of it. But the thing with the rally car with an aluminum arm is if you should happen to have an off, say where you bend a control arm that's aluminum, if you try and bend it back, they have a tendency of snapping because that's just kind of what aluminum does. So we were trying to find the steel ones, and so I discovered that because there's a difference between the sedan and the wagon, and it's difference in track width, because the wagons are the GC width and then the sedans are wider. And it apparently seems that the Nap arms that I ordered in, even sorting them by sedan and saying that they're for sedan, are actually wagon arms. So we're trying. Looks like Dorman is maybe more correct.
I've run into that before.
But not a Subaru. Not a Subaru anymore.
Not Subaru. No, this is aftermarket arms.
Yeah.
That means your rally car is no longer a Subaru.
Does it?
You put an aftermarket part on it.
Does it?
Sorry.
Well, I'm not going that far.
I mean, at a certain point, if steel control, I mean, let's put it this way: there's not enough rally people buying steel control arms to like have. I mean, it's not a lot of them. You know, Subaru makes parts that go on cars that show up at the dealership needing a part replaced, ostensibly, right?
Well, but with the steel arms, there might be another layer to it, which is
probably harder to make too.
Well, many years ago, there was actually a bulletin where all of the steel arms had to be checked for corrosion.
Oh, interesting.
And if they were, because there was some kind of an issue where moisture was getting into the center of the arm, so they actually, I believe, and anybody's familiar with this, you can correct me in the comments, but I believe what they had to do is drill a small inspection hole and then go in and inspect for rust on the inside of the arm, and if the arm was compromised, then it had to be replaced. And so I wouldn't be surprised, especially even with aftermarket arms, that maybe it's harder to produce a steel arm that's not going to have any corrosion issues. Or, I mean, aluminum from a corrosion standpoint, there's a lot of advantages to it.
I mean, at the end of the day, somebody who does finance for a living is looking at, you know, transactions of control arms versus cost of maintenance.
Sure.
I mean, things about aluminum is different issues, like castings wear out when you cast parts.
And the raw materials are way more expensive.
Yeah. So, like, it makes sense that, okay, they still have a casting for aluminum. Then maybe they just have a whole pile of aluminum arms sitting on a shelf somewhere, and they ran out of the steel ones, right? And it's like, okay, do we spin up a new assembly line to make more of them, or do we not? There's a lot of other stuff, though, in that area that's discontinued, right? Like subframes. You can't get I don't think you can get a Baja rear subframe anymore.
Probably
which
not.
also covers the older Outback rear subframes, and those are similar parts. They're steel. It's molded and then welded together, right?
Well, today I was looking up for a customer Spec B, Legacy Spec Bs, so that the Spec B had aluminum
arms,
rear trailing arms, and then aluminum front control arms. And I think maybe even one of the multi-link components in the back was also aluminum. All of these specific Spec B suspension components are discontinued. So, yeah, that's like, I'm sure that for Spec Bs, many years there was not that many sold. So it's a pretty small production run car. But yeah, knowing that those parts are now discontinued.
Are they still in the Japanese catalog?
That I have not checked. But and they did have Spec Bs there, so I guess that's a
They had a lot more Spec Bs there.
Yeah.
They had, I mean, 05, 09, the Spec B came with a bunch of different engine options, too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But, I mean, this thing about, like, at a certain point, you know, I don't know if RCM or somebody else is gonna step in and start making stuff when it comes to control arms.
Yeah,
but
I was thinking about that with the Spec B rear trailing arm and hub assembly, but I can't find an aftermarket reproduction of it.
No,
which
I've
kind of
never
doesn't
seen
make sense because I mean that's a pretty complicated piece.
Yeah, and this at least the U.S. numbers of those cars are so low. That's one of those scenarios where you would go, you know, if your Spec B had a broken rear control arm for whatever reason, and you went to your neighborhood mechanic, they would order the, you know, whatever parts store one they can get,
Probably just the regular.
and it's gonna be the cast, the
steel.
Is it steel in those? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Those cars are a little weird because they're multi-link rear.
Yeah,
But they're not like the Imprezas at all. Anyway, they're not, you're gonna get the heck. If I had a Spec B right now and I had to replace one of those things, I'd go to the junkyard and I'd get the part off a regular Legacy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
Aftermarket.
Aftermarket.
That's what I would do.
Well, so
you can't get a lot of those parts aftermarket.
Well, just don't have a Spec B, have a GD, and then aftermarket.
Right, but so the question is not the reason that I raised the question about Project Midnight is not aftermarket versus OEM, but it's so
I'm derailing it on purpose. But I think it's funny. Yeah.
Okay. Hilarious, Tasso.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's because like all right, my guess on Project Midnight is that the only part on that car that probably rolled off of any other Subaru production, rolled off of any Subaru production line, is probably the badge, and that's it.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned that to me the last time I saw you, and I was like, that's all. I mean, the Family Huckster.
Yeah.
That they call their 1984, I think, or something. GL wagon. I remember when they did their breakdown of that car, of how they built it. Just about the only OEM part is the grill, and I think the taillights.
Yep.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was something like that. I'd be surprised if Midnight even has an OEM badge. It's probably a sticker. I would hope it's a sticker. Yep. Otherwise, those guys are wasting weight.
Right. Well, so in part of the motivation around this is like all of these are tube chassis cars. So you're not starting with a production unibody, and then it's all carbon fiber. So they're making the molds. And I guess you could argue in some cases the molds are based on like a production fender or a production hood, but it's made on all carbon fiber, which, okay. But like the engine, so what they're using in these cars, it's a Subaru EJ engine, but it isn't. It's actually a complete billet engine.
Are they in a crust block?
Yeah, the crust
I think
block.
even the open class rally cars are too, right?
They are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the current ARA cars, and then they're using SEDEV drivetrain. So the engine is based on an EJ, but it's not a Subaru block. There's no OEM parts. There's a lot of key differences with the crest cast blocks and the cast head,
CNC.
billet CNC cast block or billet heads and block. They're not using OEM components, OEM size components, and then the drivetrain is completely bespoke. The suspension is completely bespoke.
So there was a time when NASCAR stock car racing meant that when Chevy made a Monte Carlo, that they literally designed the production road car in a certain way because the race car needs to do this, otherwise we won't be competitive.
Right.
When Subaru sold GDs with
you're coming over to my side.
So it was
you're about to walk your way into my
why is the GD sedan, like, why if you go and get a GD sedan of any kind in the US is it wide body, why is it of a wider track width than a wagon? Because the Subaru race cars were GD sedans, right? That's the only reason that could possibly make sense. They use the same parts.
Right.
There was a homologation version that needed the same parts. Heck, go look at the Celica. I know somebody who's got a Celica GT4 now, and the RC versions of those have blank spots on the headers where you drill to thread in the anti-lag system.
Right.
Look at Evos.
Yeah.
From like my Evo friends are gonna hate. Like, I don't know what it is, 4, 5, 6, 7 or something like that. They had the fresh air pipes pre-plumbed for the exhaust for their fresh air in the leg.
Yeah.
And it was just capped for like the street cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Toyotas were the same way. I mean, heck, the GD STIs have intercooler sprayers, which is...
And so I guess that is like the core of what made me think about this is just these new kind of like halo cars that Subaru's building. I would call them Vermont sports cars. They're not Subarus.
Yeah, that's Subaru, not Subaru's building. Subaru's supporting in a way.
But this is the same. So the reason where I was
homologation,
where I was going with this, is I guess the 70s was the last time that a stock car was kind of actually a real car, right?
Yeah, right. Like Daytonas and stuff like that, right?
Right. Then,
no idea.
No, I find old NASCAR history really funny just because of how they. Like, the single goal of a NASCAR team every season was how the heck do we hide nitrous in the car so we can qualify.
Right.
Not they don't race with it, but they have to qualify with that. Like, I was listening to a story about one car where the cage was filled with nitrous and there was a little tube that went into the intake manifold.
There's great stories. You want to talk about ingenuity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's the thing but then manufacturers to do all the things we need to do in our road cars, which, you could be like, oh, well, for emissions reasons or for crash safety reasons or for whatever, just because it's cheaper. Like, I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about the fact that sedans are going away, and yet NASCAR stock cars today are still sedans.
Right.
So
for how much longer? Who knows?
Right, exactly. And that's just it, is that at a certain point, it is more cost effective and makes a better race car if you make a space frame make a tube chassis, and then you put body panels on it that make it vaguely resemble the thing it's supposed to be.
And it's not just recently that became the case.
No,
look at the, what is it, S14 Subaru? The last of the WRC Subarus, right?
Yeah.
Which was 2008.
Yeah. I mean, considering that I you and I both race with people who run, NASCARs and stuff, uphill climbs and stuff like that. I think it's kind of wild that on the flip side, here in rally cars, we're taking a production car and then we are fighting it.
Yeah.
We're absolutely like Drew building this Audi, what station wagon into a rally car.
Right.
You are fighting something that was not supposed to be a race car and trying to force it to be a race car.
We're kind of the last ones to the table on this one.
And this is, I mean, like you're talking about the current ARA rally cars, that's exactly what they're doing. They take basically a body in white Subaru WRX and then like at this point they're cutting most of the WRX production out of it. Like the whole rear subframe, rear suspension, everything like that is
way more than that. Look at Vermont sports cars. Even what they'll publish about what they make into the ARA cars these days. Yeah, it goes down to a bit of the C-pillar, the inside skin of the sill, the whole floor is gone.
They have they have to keep the floor.
They have to keep the floor.
Sure,
but they change it. They can also clearance the floor for exhaust and drive shaft clearance and stuff like that, right? So they take advantage of that to the full extent of the law.
That's true,
right? It's it's a they read the ARA rulebook and then cut everything that's not in the rulebook away, which is a little bit left. Yeah. And then they stick tubes in. It's even some of the pictures you see out there are like the Rallycross program, I think. So they are even more extreme. They honestly go back to like probably 20 pounds of the OEM sheet metal, and then they build a cage inside of that.
Yeah. But here's the homologation is exactly the point of, well, it would seem to me like the homologation is the point of why you have to start with this car that looks a certain way, and then why you're going out to compete with it as a manufacturer. But then from us as enthusiasts, that homologation, like that's the special sauce. Like when Subaru has to basically bake in a lot of these kind of decisions or design factors they're around the car that they're building to use for motorsports, and then you get to buy a car that has a couple. You
do realize you're validating everything that Tasso believes in.
I have the most "I told you so" attitude right now.
Well, I'm not, but I'm not disagreeing with that.
But to be fair, also, I mean, they're homologated Subarus still, right? And it's a blanket term that gets thrown around. There are still Subarus running in Group N classes, even in the current, or maybe not the current, but
up to GRs.
There's a VA Group N car, isn't there? That maybe one of the Higginses drove or something. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I'm in danger of...
I don't think there's a VA that actually
I think
even the fact that they ran a GR Group N car is pretty indicative of their willingness to run a substandard chassis.
Interestingly, so FIA, the rule book basically says to be a homologation car, you can't run a VA because there's no production model that fits it. But they are slowly. I'm sorry. I'm speaking out of my element here because I'm not an expert on the FIA rulebook. But I was catching on to there was a debate this year about rule changes that will make it easier to run, like a 2-liter VA, and basically be like if a new car still sort of complies with the old rule set. Because it used to be the car has to comply with the rule set of the year of production, right?
There's a lot of stuff around for Group N, and there had to be like factory available parts, which is why there are Group N parts.
But you can still. My point is, in FIA rulebook events, you can still run a GD, even though technically it doesn't comply with the current rulebook.
Sure, because it's grandfathered in.
It's grandfathered in, right? And my understanding was that they were looking at they're looking at rule changes to make it easier to take a slightly newer car like a VA and and make it grandfathered in still.
We should just look it up.
I know.
That would be a really bad podcast, but we should just look up what each year's homologated Subarus are.
So I guess the point that I'm trying to get at, and the concern that I have, is the fact that Subaru is obviously spending a significant amount of money developing these cars that are just completely one-offs.
Which ones?
Like Project Midnight, Family Huckster, and Airslayer. That like there's no
they're saving money, but they're saving money.
Yeah, I think it's probably cheaper to build one of those than it is to build a Group N program.
And it's probably also cheaper in a sense because I mean this is Subaru of America as far as we know, right? This is not Subaru Japan.
Well, and Vermont Sports Car on top of that. I don't know what the inner workings of their deals, but there's
but it's cheaper for them to build the the 2024 WRX ARA, which I think is what they call that model.
Yeah,
it's cheaper for them to build that as a tube chassis with Subaru body panels stapled on top of it than it is for them to put enough to make the VB WRX McPherson's truck. Right?
Well, there's other reasons that they're not making a McPherson.
Well, you see what I mean. They're going to make a VB WRX, and it's going to do the VB WRX is designed to drive on the road and go to the grocery store, and also kind of be fun while you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it's a great car to drive. Things because I think one of the things that Subaru ran into,
being wicked
unintentionally, well, I guess kind of unintentionally, is the fact that the if there's a downside of homologating a rally car to and tying your production car to the rally car, and making decisions all around the rally use of this chassis, that then maybe it's not as optimal for other disciplines, like, say, road racing and time attack and that sort of thing.
Not even
secondary disciplines. That's what I would call them. Yeah.
Sure, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to make a factory rally car anymore. Because
well now especially now all rally has changed entirely,
even the GR Corolla is mostly a autocross weapon, and then
and very
put parts on
loosely
it to
tied to anything to do with rally.
Sure.
Because like what rally cars, and I guess that the biggest argument against my point is the fact that WRC cars now are completely bespoke tube chassis where it's the silhouette is all that matters.
Rally 1 cars.
Rally 1.
And 2s.
Are the 2s tube chassis now too? Man, we should have done research before we sat down and talked about this.
The Rally 2 cars are almost, their drivetrains are nothing like you see in the production car.
Sure, that's fine, but they never have been, right? I mean, since the mid-2000s.
Sure.
Late 2000s.
The top end of Rally has never had a normal road car.
Not since the 80s.
Well, no, I would say not since probably right when Subaru left, when they mandated the inline 4-cylinder engine. Right before that, there was a decent amount of overlap between a production car.
A decent amount of overlap, but it wasn't the same. I mean, at WRC, right?
Yeah.
Group N, yes, and that led to cool. Yeah, by definition.
Yep.
But even. I mean, how sick would it have been if the Rocket was like an OEM option? But it was. I mean, that motor was
Rocket anti-lag is what we're
talking about. I mean, at least it was wet sump and stuff, right? So that's cool.
Because it had to be based on a production engine, even though they were using the EJ20.
So I've done some research into this. The 16-bit bug eyes are the last Subaru that you could take a production car and basically make the rally car out of it. After that, not so much.
What do you mean?
In the sense that
my gut reaction is to disagree with you.
What
but
you're actually seeing, come out of the ProDrive production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could put ProDrive parts on it. You didn't need to cut the car in half, as far as I understand. What's your disagreement there?
No, I think it was the GD.
That's what I'm saying.
All the GDs, but not the bug eye.
Why not the bug eye?
Or why? I mean, why did it stop at the bug eye and not the rest of the GDs?
Because the bug eye was the last version that had engine management that was also designed to be race car engine management.
Oh, your argument is that the OEM engine management in the bug eye was designed to be race car engine management?
Yes.
Why? I'll hear you out.
Well, I have a guess, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. What?
Well, because you had very complicated standalone systems,
right?
But because there were Group N flashes and stuff for maybe not the WRC cars, but Group N cars.
Yeah.
There were Group N maps you could load on to just factory ECUs.
They had I never played with a Bug-Eye STI, so I can't talk to them, but the American ones were still simple enough that you didn't need to completely bastardize the engine management to make them run things like anti-lag off a factory ROM, or to be able to run engine protection based on EGT and stuff like that. Those went away when the newer ROMs started coming out, and that was the point, at least in the US, when the engine management stopped being the same as the rest of the cars around the world. You know what I mean? You stopped being able to plug a JDM ECU into an American car.
Everything now became really bespoke.
It became really bespoke to the US market stuff. Mm-hmm. And then that got even crazier in, I think, 2011 is when the completely different car platform. It's actually wild now if you think about it, because the engine management platform that the 2011-ish and newer cars run off of, no relation whatsoever to the engine management around the world. Sure. Like, they just completely redesigned ECU.
In a lot of that, I'm sure would stem from the fact that the U.S. spec cars were now adding in a lot of emissions systems that it's only in the U.S.
I can't
secondary air injection.
But Japanese cars had secondary air injection, didn't they?
I don't think so.
Well, that I don't know.
No, at least TGVs. Oh, what's hanging me up is that is the make or break point for that's the last car you could make a race car.
I don't think it's the make or break point necessarily, but it illustrates kind of like that deviation between, like, here's what we need for the motorsports car, and you bake it into the production car, and then that's just been kind of lessening as time has gone on, to the point where now here's our cool unicorn halo race car.
But we agree that the current, the VSC Halo cars are not really Subarus, but in the same way that the NASCAR Camry is not really a Toyota.
Yeah, I don't get why.
And it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. For NASCAR and
it makes sense for Subaru and VSC. I mean, it makes you feel bad if you can't buy. Like, it sucks that you can't get great parts for, like, Group N STI parts for your modern Subaru. Yep. Go look at the performance catalog. The performance catalog for the dealership parts that go on your new your new part, and you can get a STI embossed shift knob for your CVT.
Yeah, there's no Group N. There's not been any Group N parts really since I want to say 2015.
Oh.
There's been way more Group N parts that were not made available in the U.S., but that were available in, like, Japan and Europe. And they had a lot of stuff that went up through 8 to 14-ish.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a lot of STI-themed parts for your Subaru 2015 Subaru in Japan, but it's not Group N stuff.
Right. No, it's not competition-based.
No.
They've pulled back completely from anything motorsports-based, competition-based, and it's all kind of around the STI logo, STI appearance.
Which is unfortunate, because if you think, I love the fact that when you go to find what's a good aftermarket part for my, like, Subaru that I like to drive hard, Group N is still a great option, like, across the board for GDs
where
and GRs.
The part exists.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But, like, when you want to get transmission bushings and transmission mounts, like, for example, on my GR, the transmission mount in it is a wet noodle, and the trans is out because I have to fix it. I'm like, I'm gonna throw that away and put a Group N transmission mount on it, because I trust that it's not gonna drive like crap, and it's gonna be a little bit of an upgrade.
This is the trickle down that I think. This is my underlying concern, is that, like, to maybe pull 2 steps back and think big picture. When Subaru was in the WRC, when there was kind of this homologation between Group N and the rally and stuff, us as enthusiasts, we were able to tap into some of the design aspects of the cars that we got, and we were able to tap into it with some of these Group N parts that were available, and not only that, but even in, like, the early 2000s and stuff, Subaru was actually helping facilitate, and they were encouraging people to go out and build a Subaru into a rally car, because there was contingencies.
Sure.
If you're running a Subaru in a rally event and there was like more than 5 competitors in your class and you podium or whatnot, Subaru would actually write you a check. There were cash payouts for people to run Subarus.
So did you see that launch controls coming back?
No, I didn't think it had gone away.
Well, there was a debate about whether or not it was going to continue because I guess they were like, oh, maybe we're not getting as much viewership as we need.
Which again, I think brings up the conversation: what is Vermont Sports Car's primary product?
But that's I was about to say. I was going to go from there into, if TikTok didn't exist, then there wouldn't be like Project Midnight. I listen. I opened up.
I thought I was going to be the edgy one in this podcast.
Dude, I opened up I crawled out of bed this morning, opened up my phone, and immediately, I need to look at Instagram. And the first thing I see is a Subaru Motorsports page video with like other people collabing. Pastrana in the Huckster, doing this little look how close he gets to this cameraman thing, and I'm like. You know what? My first thought when I saw that was like, I've been at enough takeovers to know that this is.
Well, and that's I think ultimately my point is that Subaru's missed the mark. Like what they're
No, he hasn't. No, they haven't.
They're trying to advertise, but now what are they trying to advertise?
They're trying to advertise.
Well, but before that's why the STI has such an allure. Because that felt like that was the closest car to the motorsports to the WRC car.
Who are the first crowd of people? We talked about this before. The first crowd of people that bought bug eyes were IT guys, right?
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
Most of those guys have Audis now, and now the people I know who are really interested in WRXs, mostly VAs, are under 25, and they are not IT guys, and their car smells like vape smoke.
Well,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
It smells good. I don't know.
Well, and but is that because there is not as much as there once was. If you're a car enthusiast, if you're a rally enthusiast, if you want to build a race car, there's not as much of a platform to get into. If you get into a Subaru, there's not as much to build on from that platform as there used to be. And so the appeal of that platform, if you want to do these other things, it's kind of it's being eroded a little bit because there's just not the support.
Everybody I know who owns a VW is in their 40s, but I promise you the second owner is going to be in their 20s.
That's funny. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that too.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them are...
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's like BMW 740s from the late 90s. They went from company executives to vape smokers in one generation of car ownership with those cars. They degraded in class so quickly.
Well,
it was incredible.
And so I would say that part of that is because it's a WRX, it's not an STI. You don't have the differentiation that the STI had over WRX, the higher quality of parts. It was closer to something you could really go out and race with than the WRX was. But then also because there's a gap.
Who took their 2013 STI and raced it?
Like full on wheel to wheel stuff. Very few people, but even, to the track.
Even to the track, I don't know about that.
No, I mean
the only people I know who take GRs to the track, they're full on race cars.
If you're smart, you're getting a Corvette.
Yeah.
Right. Or a Mustang.
Yeah.
Or anything but a Subaru.
Yeah, I think we lost that
battle. Or
battle.
you're in a GC unlimited time attack car.
Dude, we lost that battle in 2008.
Yeah.
It's actually 2009.
It's actually within the GD.
Well, no,
I've been saying it the whole time.
So,
I'm number one.
What happened in 2009, why I say 2009, is because there was the bearing issue where there were cars that were having bearing failures, 1,000 miles or under, like brand new cars off the lot, and what I've been told is that it actually has to do with the metallurgy of the bearings. Subaru had to change them. This is where the surface treated cranks came from, because before the bearings were soft enough, and I think it was primarily rod bearings that were soft enough where in the break-in process, the bearing material would kind of absorb some of these small particles, and in the break-in process, and everything just went on and
I mean, we could all point to that general areas like, okay, CAN bus was introduced.
Well, no, but
transmission got cheaper.
But here's what happened. Here's what happened because I was doing this when this all came through. Is that all of a sudden, before then, everybody was excited about getting a Subaru and going out there and driving Subaru, going to the track. Now, when there's this threat of you can have a brand new Subaru engine with 500 miles on it, and it would when it went, it completely grenaded.
Okay.
And so now everybody was terrified to do anything with the car.
I call BS on that. GR86, BRZ, people aren't taking those to the track right now?
No, I'm talking about this is what happened in 2010.
I know, but I'm saying GR Corolla, people are taking those to the track.
Sure. GR Corolla.
And they're also going on fire and eating their bearings and all the things that are happening. But there's still people still taking them to the track.
All I can tell you is from what I saw in that period that fear of having that kind of an engine failure really turned people off of tracking the cars, modifying the cars, and it never quite came back. Really, where it really started to come back was in 13-14 when the BRZ came out, because that was such a
new Miata.
It's a new kind of purpose-built track car, and now we've run into this issue with the oil starvation, which it sounds like there's really getting to be close to some really good solutions, so that it's not going to be as much of an issue. But then, like, that oil starvation issue has now kind of tainted the excitement, or tamped down the excitement of people with that platform to take it to the track, even though it does that really well.
I think the same demographic has been buying the same Subarus in terms of the track people, and they just got less into the track because they're just not as into it anymore, right?
It's possible. It's
certainly possible. The same IT guys that bought bug guys are interested in modifying their Subarus did.
Yeah, well, and
then there's no more.
That's a whole other thing, because a lot of them moved on.
They've got Audis now.
They got Audis because they're great.
BMWs, Porsches, they moved on into these other things. Like if you're an IT guy back in the early aughts, and you're still an IT guy,
you should have a Porsche.
You still have your Subaru, Stage 2 Plus in your garage under a cover.
Maybe
because it's sunburst yellow, so it's gonna get expensive someday.
So I'm not gonna. Somebody was just telling me they want to buy like a GD STI and just put it in the garage now because it's going to be worth a lot in 20 years.
Whatever. I mean, but what was it? Bring a trailer or something like that. Some like 400-mile STI popped up and went for $8 bajillion.
Did it?
I'm hyperbolizing, but it was something stupid like that. So yeah, they already have that. Fortunately, most of us beat them up enough that they're not worth money.
Yeah.
So we can keep them as race cars.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy to have 5 or 6 shitty Subarus instead of that money of a Porsche, because I'd probably break the Porsche too. Well, then I'd be sad.
Yeah. And then you'd be sad. Yeah, because fixing a lot of these European cars, it's a whole different order of magnitude than.
This is a different conversation, but a friend of mine blew up his Subaru over the weekend, and it was literally like, "Hey man, I blew up my Subaru. Oh, that sucks. Hey, I'll be over in a minute. We'll tow you to my garage, and then we will take the short block that I got sitting on this shelf that I had a thing, and we're gonna slam some heads on it. And 18 miserable hours later, it's driving again.
Right. And like, you don't realize how affordable Subarus are to work on in that way.
Holy shit!
Until you start pricing out like similar kind of failures for.
I was looking for the cheapest used flat 6 I can buy that was in a Porsche because I want to put it in a Subaru and piss people off.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And this, hell no, no matter what it is, it's worth more than any car I could possibly put it in. Mm-hmm. Just the friggin' like 180,000, just like 120,000 mile flat, Porsche Boxster. No.
Yeah.
But it's still, I'm sitting here thinking about kind of like the parameters of our thought process here of our debate, and it frequently, like, we wandered from rally to tarmac racing so quickly and talked about how no one runs a Subaru in tarmac events, right? At least circuit racing and stuff like that, right? Or if you're serious, you run a Mustang, or no one's taking their Subaru to the track anymore, yada yada yada. It's still, like, I would argue by far the most common rally car in the United States right now.
Yeah. And I would say a big part of the reason is because somebody built them back when there was contingencies.
Maybe.
There's a lot of people.
I don't think the ones running right now are old Subarus.
There's people still building new ones.
No, yeah,
sure.
I think probably every year, and I'm going to pull this number directly out of my ass. 10 new Subarus are built for rally cars in this country.
I think more than that.
I think more than that.
Yeah, because I know it was crazy if I think about it. I know like 6 people building rally cars right now, and I know them well.
I saw a post today. Someone was looking for a GD and a cage kit to build a car right now.
We could call up Bill Petro and ask him how many cages he sells for GDs.
There's companies cranking out cage kits for GD Subarus for FIA complaint, 280 whatever.
Especially the GD chassis and the GC. We'll throw the GC in there too. But like, if you want to go fast on dirt, you want to do rallycross or stage rally. I mean, it is such a capable chassis to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the front and rear McPherson, you have the suspension options. There's brake options. There's and kind of related to the homologation, like there are Subaru 4-pots and 2-pots. There's not only just ways to get brakes and suspension on the car and get it to work. Drivetrain. Well, I guess drivetrain, that's getting harder to find.
Yeah, and the 4-pot, 2-pots weren't the homologated brakes for the Group N cars, right? They got Alcons and stuff like that.
No, for Group N, I think they were.
Yeah,
I thought they got Alcons. I thought they. I mean, someone please comment below or just yell at me in person.
The WRC cars were running Alcon.
I think the Group N cars had a homologated Alcon.
I think
don't hold me to it. I'm pretty sure I've seen the Group N on web listings, and it's crazy expensive. Would be super sweet.
Yeah.
But yes, nonetheless, that the fact that it had brakes that fit under a competition 15-inch wheel was not a mistake.
Yeah.
In that era,
for sure.
So.
And like think about any other car. I mean, even the Evos. There's more part support and other things from other Subarus you can put on a GD to make it into a rally car versus.
I'll point this out. If in 2008 Subaru had not continued putting brakes that fit under a 15-inch wheel on their WRXs would be way better track cars. Like the 08
there's an argument there for sure.
The 08 to 14 WRX having 15-inch, having rally brakes.
Yeah.
This makes them terrible. Like, even as cars that are just like, I'm going to go to the track today. Prepare to wreck your brakes.
Yeah.
Right? That in-between period.
But that's why you got to focus on primary forms of motorsport like rally and not secondary forms like circuit racing.
Yeah, but my point, heck, you can get in trouble with your brakes in a WRX on the street. Especially if you put a tune on it.
Arguably, it for sure hamstrung them as track weapons by keeping them as good rally cars for those eras.
So why is when I remember I was talking about this when the VB came out and you test drove it.
Yeah.
And autocross, it was like, this thing's a really good autocross car.
Yeah.
And the 08...
Is it though compared to other cars?
But the crazy part is compared to the VA, it's a much better autocross car. And the VA and the VB are both insanely better than the 08 to 14 WRX as an autocross car.
Yeah, but those are all bad.
Right? I know, but that's my point. Subaru Subaru not focusing on street performance, which is an extension kind of circuit racing performance, right, to some extent, or at least tarmac performance.
Sure.
Subaru not focusing the 08 Plus on tarmac performance meant that it kind of is a shitty car.
I agree, but for a different reason. I think it's just a shitty car. And
I don't think VAs are and VBs
I'm trying to wrap my head
around
this.
08s and 14s are.
But just because of technology, the bones of the car, I don't think are really any better, and they just keep getting heavier.
VBs are about they're as light as a V8. Some of them are lighter, depending on the trim.
Heavy,
and they have bigger brakes.
Slightly, okay. but basically legacy brakes. Until now, where the TR has got the STI Brembos.
Sure. But they finally the VB finally has enough brake for the engine power.
It's a low power motor that way.
Well, it's a low power motor. No, it's more. They make more power than the VAs,
but a little bit. Yeah.
The VB
was it 286? Is what they're rated at?
Something like that. But the VA. How much did the VA WRX make? I actually don't know the peak power. Not that much though. Anyway.
Ooh, yeah. I would say 260.
But I'm saying if you expand that perspective wider than the Subarus, then it quickly becomes a pretty mediocre car with attitude, right?
So, But I guess I'm just trying to reconcile with the fact that I've driven a VAWX on a racetrack and I didn't like it, and I drove a VBWX on the racetrack and I really liked it.
Yeah,
it's way better.
Yeah,
just
I think they made a lot of improvements to the VB that got completely lost because the body style change was so polarizing.
Yeah,
that everybody was looking at the fender flares and did not care about anything else to do with the engine or the suspension changes, the steering rack. None of that was a factor because look at these fender flares. Just look at them.
Oh yeah, no, I
but that's I think indicative of what the primary market for Subarus is. And again, to kind of bring it back around to is Project Midnight a Subaru, it doesn't matter. Vermont Sports Car's primary product is not Subaru performance, it's internet attitude.
Vermont Sports Car wants to make Vermont Sports Car look like the primary or like the predominant badass car builder, race car builder in
non-NASCAR circles. Right, yeah.
And I think that all of those cars, the Huckster, Project Midnight, and Airslayer, absolutely do that, but what does that have to do with Subaru? And so what
does Subarus have to do with Subaru at this point? Well, is what my argument is, right? Like it's in my, I guess where I'm coming at it from is like if I had the millions of dollars that they probably gave to Vermont Sports Car to build these cars, or what if I put these millions of dollars into development of better parts or even group end parts, or like helping to solve like one of the weirdest things if you think about like the oil starvation issue that's going on with the BRZ, and some of these low level issues that Subarus hit when you start making more power and tracking them. Why isn't Subaru doing anything to participate or to fix any of these issues? I don't think they care. They
absolutely they care. Until they are legally mandated, there is no point that Subaru is going to say, "Oh, oops, we didn't make a good oil pan on the BRZ, so here's a group N oil pan that's better."
Yeah, they don't want to
lawsuit. No, they can't do that. What they can do is the thing that they've honestly done probably since like the bearing issue we're talking about in 08, 09. They revised the bearings, right?
They had to revise the bearings, and then the solution at that time, this is where the surface treated cranks came from, the nitride treating and the heat treating.
Right, but they're not going to make a press release of, "Yay, we got rid of our crappy parts and are making good parts now." It's like there's this. I remember my father making this joke because New Yorker pizza is a thing, right? Like when Papa John's, I think, rolled out, was it Papa John's or Little Caesars? One of them rolled out a new slogan, like, "Now we're cooking."
Okay.
And it was like, what the heck were you doing before?
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's
good dad joke, but no, it is a good point, right? And with like the sealant issue too, right? Like there's the legal department is the number one motorsports killer in every
Toyota just went through with this. There's a social media personality who's big in the Toyota like mechanic world, and he's bought one of the new Tundras, right, that are now kind of getting some buzz around bearing failures.
Oh, okay.
Toyota revised the bearing part number. They don't have it, to my knowledge, they don't have a TSB. From what he was saying, they don't have like a TSB or a recall around them, but there's a new bearing part number on an engine that, for some strange reason, seems to be having bottom end failures, like a brand new engine.
I don't think any car manufacturer wants to have any kind of failure.
Right. And they absolutely don't want to publicize that something is wrong with the, 100,000 cars they already shipped.
Right.
And are sitting on dealership lots or in consumers' hands.
Sure.
So, I mean, to some extent, Subaru's involvement with the and to my understanding is that the sealant issue is not an issue anymore, supposedly.
No, I'm sure it's not.
Right. So you can, because I work with companies that do big projects and sometimes things screw up.
Sure.
And you better believe that if the fire alarm goes off, if you start to hear reports of something completely catastrophic happening, everybody is, hair on fire, running around what's going on. But there's always a public message.
Sure.
And a lot of the times the public message is,
everything's fine. It's all under control.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sure that the very moment that somebody posted a video on YouTube of a BRZ oil pickup being full of sealant, there was somebody in Japan screaming at somebody on the phone in California.
So I'll revise my thing because I still stand by what I said. Subaru doesn't care. It's that they don't care about it from a motorsports performance perspective of their car. They do care about it from a manufacturer and a financial liabilities perspective.
Yeah.
But they're not like, oh no, now people won't think that this BRZ is a sweet car to make into a race car. They're thinking about it from Subarus are known for reliability and all-wheel drive road-hugging performance.
Yeah, and
so they're worried about image, right?
Yeah.
They're not worried about the performance aspect of the vehicle, and I think probably they would almost rather that motorsports people were having oil control issues because then they can say this is not a Subaru problem. We did not say this was a race car.
Don't drive your GR86 over 86 miles an hour or something like that.
Right, but isn't that the piece that's missing? Which is why so many people get into Subarus, but then they move on to something else. I don't
think they're getting into Subarus for that. And I think oil control issues isn't even a big deal for most Subaru performance people.
Here's what I mean by that, is that, if there definitely are a number of people that got into Subarus, started tracking their Subarus, got frustrated with some of the first set of problems you can run into, be it oiling issues or overheating or whatever. And then they just jump to a different platform that maybe doesn't have those issues, but they have their own set of issues.
I have a call to action here, and hey, maybe you can also do this on your other channels, because who the heck even makes it to this part of the video?
Right.
But if you bought a Subaru in the last year and it was your first Subaru, why'd you buy a Subaru?
What are you going to do with it?
Well, that's it. Why? Why did you? If you just bought a 2017 WRX from Carvana, and it's your first Subaru, and I imagine you're watching this because you Googled where do I buy mods for my Subaru?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or who knows what? Yeah.
Right. Why'd you get it? What made you pick the Subaru? Why didn't you get a GTI or I don't know?
I bought a Subaru in the last year.
Yeah.
It was a Forester Sport.
Yeah.
Because it was reliable and it had more room than the Crosstrek we had.
It wasn't your first Subaru.
Oh, it wasn't my first Subaru. That's my point. Yeah.
If you just bought your first Subaru, why? And
my first new car ever.
Why didn't you get a Fist or a GTI?
And I'll say also, if you have purchased a VB WRX all the way back to 22 and up, why did you buy it? What do you want to do with it? What grabbed you enough about the VB WRX to buy that car? Why is that interesting?
So, over the last decade, what has been the number one of people calling Flatirons Tuning? Hey, do you guys have, or can you help me do this to my car? What has been the number one part category or modification people come looking for help with?
For the VB WRX?
Nope. In general.
Just in general?
And let's bring this up. I'll let you think about it for a second.
Okay.
Because I used to say it, I still say it as a joke every time I come in here. I'm looking for, a novelty shift knob or a blow-off valve when I come in the door. I'm like, hey, give me all your blow-off valves, and I'll say novelty shift knobs.
I would say, I would categorize it as a blanket statement as maintenance. By and large, it's maintenance stuff.
Okay.
And there's so many questions.
So oil filters.
But modification-wise, right?
Kits,
I think I'm sort of... What would it be? Access ports and turbos or downpipes?
Well, you said what is the most. And the most questions that we get, I think I would put them under the maintenance umbrella. I need to do this. What do I need? What is... There's 6 different options for the parts to do this maintenance project.
Well, you know what's interesting about that? That implies DIY.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
What kind of maintenance? If we can, I don't know, if we're wandering
filters,
into
timing belts, water pumps, oil pumps, suspension components.
Hey, I just blew up my engine. Now I need a timing kit for the new one.
Yeah.
Well, there's that. Then there's I don't want to have an engine failure. What do I do to prevent the failures?
Hey, I just blew up my engine. I need a timing kit for the new engine. And also, what else can I bolt on so it won't blow up again?
And I guess air oil separators, like preventative stuff. What are what are the actual preventative aftermarket things that I can put on that make the car more reliable, run better.
Are you saying you're not selling turbos and downpipes?
Oh, in the last...
Take green speed out of it. Take carb out of it. Take those.
No, it's gone down significantly.
Yeah, I don't think that's green speed or
that's to be
carb's fault.
Expected, though.
Well, I honestly cannot tell you the last downpipe that we sold. I mean, it's been a long time, but that's because we're in Colorado. It's because, like... Yeah, I mean, we can't sell them here locally.
Sure.
And so there's no demand locally. It's
the first time I ever met you guys. The first thing I ever came into when you're at the dealership.
Yeah.
And I met Scotty.
It
was for a downpipe.
Yeah, so way back, let's say in like 10 years ago or more, like it was all power stuff. If it wasn't maintenance, it was power. Like downpipe, stage 1, stage 2, bolt-on turbo. What do I need to bolt on this turbo? If I put on this turbo, what other supporting mounts do I need? Like injectors, intercooler, top mount versus front mount, all. It's and I would say when power was at the top of mind, it was maintenance and power stuff, and power. It was like that was 90% of all the questions. There was very little about drivetrain and suspension. Now we're getting more questions about suspension and brakes because now that's what you can do. I think
you've also been.
I mean, what?
Touting it like to the point that it's been on the wall and on T-shirts now for 5 years. With great brakes
power.
And,
with great power comes great brakes and great suspension.
Yeah, exactly right. So I mean, I don't know how much Flatirons has created its market that way, and I mean, you said you don't think it's a green speed or carb issue, and I think it has to be right. We can't.
Well, it's
say
certainly
it's just
related.
because the DIY stuff, it just isn't power stuff anymore. Like, A, it's a pain in the butt.
Post green speed,
B, it's expensive.
Yeah,
you can buy a pretty good turbo from Green Speed. It's an expensive freaking turbo for what it gives you.
Well, but the difference now too is you can get the turbo even if you pay for the turbo, you bolt the turbo on the car. Now to get the car to run properly, now there's more hoops to jump through.
I don't in some way there's also like you were saying earlier, like it used to be people would buy a lot of power stuff and some maintenance stuff, and now they're all buying maintenance stuff. It's because all the people who put the power stuff on their car blew it up, and now they're like, yeah, okay.
I bet there's a lot of stage 2 Subarus kicking around there with 100,000 miles on their 18Gs or whatever, And like I guess that's not a stage 2, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Like the normal mod path or whatever cars are just kicking out there.
I don't see a lot of them anymore.
There was for a long time there was a ton. Weird. Yes, I mean
Colorado makes it really hard though because a lot of those cars needed little tweaks, little updates, maintenance that required a retune or changing something out, and they can't retune them. So
now this is where now like we still talk to people about power builds. Usually when we're getting and going through somebody that's doing like a big engine build, power and turbo selection, all that sort of stuff. A lot of times now it's around a competition vehicle.
So I got a question. I don't know the answer to this. Maybe you do, John.
Okay.
If I had a Subaru, if I had a GRSTI in Germany and I wanted to put Group N parts on it, is that legal?
Oh,
do I have to get it engineered?
Whether it was a TUV or whatever.
Yes, I want to say. May. Well, I want to say no, but maybe.
The reason I ask this is because
I'm just gonna Google it.
The thing about the Group N parts, because they're all basically coming from Japan in the way that Japanese Subaru, because Subaru Japan is different thing completely than Subaru America. The way that they build stuff, all that stuff has to be Ministry of Transport certified. Right.
Yep.
And that definitely affects what is a Group N part, and that probably makes it more expensive to design and build.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yep.
So Subaru Japan on their own, and STI, they're not going to make something that has to be Ministry of Transport certified unless it's going to make them enough money to justify that. And so why does there no Group N stuff for VA?
So when you say
there's no market for it.
Well,
not enough of a market. Anyway.
The thing that pops in my mind here is KW suspension.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the odd things about KWs are they're one of the coilover brands that don't come with top hats.
Mm.
But the reason that they don't come with top hats is because they have all of those European specifications. Because I think they're out of Germany, is it? I think it's Germany.
I don't know.
But it's because they pass all of those road requirements. Because like most street-going vehicles in Europe, it's very hard to modify them because you can't drive them on the street because the components don't pass the test. But that's also one of the reasons why KWs are more expensive, because they've done all the engineering and certification so that it has the was it TVA or whatever TV certification so that you can bolt it onto the car. Yeah.
So that affects where Subaru is going to put its money as well in terms of development, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, them giving money to VSC to build a social media vehicle, like literally and figuratively.
Would it be too much to say that like if I had to like put a very broad strokes encapsulation of their ad strategy, then it's build these cool halo cars that it doesn't matter if they're related to anything that a customer could buy at all, and do really cool exciting things to get people excited about these cool and exciting things.
Get more followers for Subaru Motorsport USA.
Right.
TikTok.
And then that's it. And if somebody buys a VBWX and they want to rallycross and do anything with it, that's not our problem. Yeah. We want to create the demand for the car to sell to do this, but to actually facilitate doing any of this stuff.
Well, it doesn't even have to be a smart business decision, because one of the things you learn about working in the corporate world is that businesses make decisions because individual people whose job it is to make follower count go up decide that they think they know the best way to do that because their bonus depends on that at the end of the year. And that may have completely different outcomes than, like, maybe they would sell more VBs if there were group N parts for VAs and VBs. Like, maybe that would make people like Subarus more and drive more Subarus. But that's maybe harder for them to measure. So, I mean, I know you've gone through this. So the easiest thing you can measure is your follower count going up. So
potentially,
right. So there's this whole thing that happens in the B2C world where you buy followers, like not literally speaking, but conceptually speaking, you put money into activities that make your follower count go up, because that's a metric that you can watch go up and say, the money I spent on this project did something.
Yeah, hold on.
See your ROI in terms of developing it.
Okay.
I don't know. Solid shit.
Here's some behind the scenes of the podcast. People come in, we lose our place. And now I second guess everything I said for the last hour. Did I really mean that? I mean, maybe you guys don't, but I do.
So
the only thing I do stand by is that GGs are the best.
No, I was gonna say it's because I sound more extremist than you do today, so therefore you're second guessing, thinking like, wait.
I'm a little tired today. Maybe that's what it is. I don't feel like fighting the world on the internet right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the question that I have is if Subaru's current priority is just social media standing, and not really giving an enthusiast like a whole bunch of support in
Subarus, right?
The person who decides how much money VSC gets, that person is the one who's setting the agenda.
Right.
Right?
Well, you've got to figure that it's like umbrellaed underneath Subaru Motorsports and Subaru Advertising. Subaru Motorsports is under Subaru Advertising. The whole reason that they do the Motorsports is because it's an advertising vehicle for the brand.
Right.
But what if they spent way less on doing these shiny, flashy things and instead spent that same kind of money in giving the enthusiasts more support, more of a ladder to work up?
Well,
I don't know.
Come on,
because they're used to be that. I'm old enough to remember when they didn't.
But I think it's way more efficient, and I'd be curious to actually hear from someone who does this or can lend some insight to this. My impression would be it's significantly cheaper to spend a few $1 million making Halo cars than it would be to support a contingency program for amateur motorsports.
Especially when, like, the certification for parts that you just talked about, honestly, like, that does make some sense.
I don't know what the homologation process costs, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
Right.
There, and to some extent, there used to be somebody at Subaru who their job was to figure out how to make the race car better.
ProDrive.
That was probably ProDrive. Yeah.
Right. But my point is that in a way, it's like there used to be the way that I'm sure that the way that a car it gets designed, including every single aftermarket accessory. Because you know this, every single aftermarket accessory that Subaru sells that's supposed to go in a car goes through the exact same certification, crash testing, all that crud that they need to for the base car. Like,
and actually, to be fair, it's possible that it's harder to even get an accessory that you're going to offer to pass through all of the certifications to make it so that you can make it available.
It's more expensive.
Yeah,
all it has to be is expensive enough that now it's not worth it. And maybe, listen, things could limp on. There could always be the one guy who's in an executive position and is allowed to say, we're going to spend more money on this thing because I think it's cool. But that gets less and less justifiable as the modern world crunches on,
Yeah. That just makes me that hurts me. That hurts my soul a little bit.
You're
probably right.
We've always known that we're the bastard children of the car industry, right? Like it's none of us is a walking Ascent, which is just the Subaru's death rattle, right?
You mean a 2025 Outback?
Yeah, whatever it is.
26 Outback? No, I'm serious. Have you seen the pictures of the new Outback? No. It's like they took
really big?
They took the Ascent badge off and they put the Outback badge on it, and they're like, here, Outback.
Remember Outbacks? You liked them? LL Bean?
Yeah. Remember LL Bean?
Just shut up and buy it, idiots. No, but so, I mean, and it's the same. I mean, we've made this point before about how race results don't matter anymore, just social media in terms of sponsorship. And arguably, I know there's examples where that's not the case. But it's nonetheless, I mean, look at Ken Block in his career. And I don't want to say ill things about him, and he did well in American rallying, but especially because I think he's a keystone figure in American motorsports at this point, bar none. I don't want to detract anything in that way, but it wasn't results that got that, right?
Sure.
And it's tough, right? And I mean, arguably, if you took any of the top drivers that anyone has put into a car across many motorsports disciplines, all the way to NASCAR at the top of this, there's a lot of folks saying NASCAR is essentially just a popularity contest of social media influencers at this point, right?
Yeah,
Pikes Peak, same thing. American Rallying, same thing. Brandon Semenuk is an amazing mountain biker.
Pretty darn good.
And he's a very good driver.
Yeah.
Does he earn untouchable status for driving, right? And I don't know how much of this is, I also am a race car driver, so I, in my heart, believe that I'm the best. Right? And I'm not saying this, it's a little bit of a joke, but I think, honestly, it has to be a part. A lot of people listening to this right now are like, well, I'm the best. I was like, yeah, no. I mean, it's good that you think that. I think I am. I recognize that I'm just one of another of us people who probably isn't correct about being the best.
If you're going to be a competitive driver,
but
you kind of have to think that you can do it better than...
Yeah, exactly, which is a roundabout way to explain a really complicated subject that is, competition and stuff. But any one of these people, right, at the top level of any motorsport, are they really the best? Look at, in Formula 1 even, the bottom 10 drivers in the field. They're very good.
Well...
Lance Stroll is a very good driver. But if he wasn't Lawrence Stroll's kid, he wouldn't be anywhere near a Formula 1
Especially after this weekend at Interlagos. If he was anybody other than the team owner's son, he would be...
Yeah, if he wasn't a billionaire himself, then he wouldn't be there, right? Yeah. It's and I don't want to take this away because this is something, or take away from any form of competition, because across the years, probably as far back as you go, and in every sport ever, this has been the case, right? And these sports only exist because of this, right? Right now, it's social media influencership. It used to be railroad tycoonery or something like that, right? I don't know, right? I haven't obviously done like a dissertation on this or whatever. But is that right now? Social media runs the world, and not just in motorsports. Look at everything. Presidential election, right? We have a social media influencer on the ballot. That's what Trump is, right?
Okay.
Whether you're for or against Trump, I'm not making any judgments here. But his main day-to-day job is influencer. the same as the girl selling bathwater, right? It's a different market. It's at a different level. I realize I'm being reductive and treading on literally all of the don't tread on categories for talking about stuff on the internet right now. So take it with whatever grains of salt you need to take it with.
All of us,
there's no
Tasso's the one who made it political, man. I don't know what to say.
I got there, and I'm back on top as the antagonizer of the podcast. I thought you had this, but you didn't. I was coming, baby.
Okay.
I voted.
So like the point is, it's election day. By the way, when we're recording this.
Recording this on Super Tuesday.
But I mean, the point is that right now, social media is the currency of the world, and motorsports is not immune to that.
No, for sure.
Vermont Sports Car is a social media company that makes cars, right? Rob Dahm is a social media influencer that did Pikes Peak this year.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the Hoonigans were a social media company that made sweatshirts, maybe the other way around, but they weren't a racing company, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's Ken Block, shoe salesman that became a social media star that became a race car driver.
All right, so then the question, if you're still listening at this point in the comments that I have, is does it matter to you that Subaru does not have like group end parts for the current cars, and that there's less motorsports oriented and competition oriented parts for the current crop of cars, BRZ, WRX, than there ever has been? Does that matter? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe the answer should be no. You're actually making me think like maybe it's, and I'm dating myself, but just part of my frustration has been remembering back to what it was before and how much support there was for the enthusiast base and how that is basically evaporated to nothing now. But maybe it doesn't matter.
I mean, I think social media is a double-edged sword where it's not just the poison in the well at the moment, it's also the well in a weird way, right? I think that's sort of indicated by if a lot of what your sales are maintenance, what are those people learning how to do maintenance? Social media, right? They're good. They're hopping on YouTube and saying, "How do I do head studs on my Subaru?"
Or change head gaskets, or
whatever, right? Yeah. And so it's both edges of the sword. It's cutting if you're willing.
Well, we're here, so this is obviously going to be part of our social media. So I mean, certainly.
Yeah, no,
I have some thoughts on that. I don't know if I want to dive into it at this point.
I go up and down on this personally too.
It's a debate.
Yeah, we're at the end of the podcast.
We're at the end of the podcast. I don't know if anybody out there would want to listen to us talk about social media. But again, if you do,
I heard it's like suicide for your algorithm. One-to-one say the word suicide. But also to talk about the algorithm or social media on your social media gets your social media de-algorithmed. So it's a chicken and egg issue.
We are not even on the algorithm, so I'm not too worried about it.
Unfortunately.
So if I said that I want the algorithm to commit suicide, then we're totally fine with that.
Exactly.
Or we're just gonna bleep that.
Actually, that would be really good as like so if I beep 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 beep. Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. But no, and so I mean it's the same thing with motorsports at the same time, right?
Sure.
We're too small a deal for the intricacies of the algorithm to make or break whether or not we're putting food on the table. For me especially, for Flatirons also.
Yeah.
Motorsports, grassroots motorsports is also too small a deal for it to matter that Subaru doesn't really support the VA or BB so much, right? We're alternative lifestyle people. That's good and bad. It's bad if you want to make money doing it. But it's good if you want to just play around with your toy car and have fun, right?
So I was curious, and of course my algorithm is my algorithm, but I opened up YouTube and just typed in the word motorsports because I was super curious what would come up first.
What you got?
First thing was a Nicki Minaj song from 6 years ago.
For sure, yeah. There's nothing about what we do that even outdoes someone accidentally misspelling motorsports or something like that, right? Like but that's fine,
ask
right?
Why that has any relevance to
It's
that
because
query.
he looks at a lot of Nicki Minaj in his free time.
Obviously.
Okay.
He's from New York. I don't know what his taste is in life or what his,
Well, it's featuring Cardi B. She's from the Bronx.
There you go.
Is that what the B is for?
I don't know.
Yep, you heard it here first. If we stopped talking about Subarus and started talking about like pop stars, God, we would make a lot more money probably, right?
I would not, because what I've been... I don't know anything about music after about the early to mid 90s.
I mean, from our homologation topic or conversation earlier, I don't know if we know that much more about homologation.
That's fair. Okay.
How about this? How about the next podcast we just get a bunch of vodka and start reading the FIA rulebook?
Oh man,
drinking.
So it's actually really good. It's just a little bit. We're welcome. I just recently using social media self-diagnosed with ADHD, and it's really been opening my world up.
Oh.
Man. And part of that is I read some beer. This is why this came up. We're talking about reading rule books. Read the Group B rule book. They were not the unlimited cars you think they are. No. They just had really low homologation requirements, which led to really fun cars, right? So it's a I don't know why this is like an interesting little distinguishment that hit my brain at one point. Group B cars were not like, oh my god, unlimited. It just made it easier for manufacturers to do wild stuff
because they only had to make
within their limitations, right? Yeah. So they were actually very limited cars.
Yeah,
their rule book is very tight.
What's the thing that these people say that it wasn't the cars that killed Group B? It was the spectators.
Yeah, because there was minimal restrictions, safety considerations for where the spectators could be. There was a lot of
And it just
I mean, was it?
There was a really rotten accident. There was a really rotten accident in Italy, like 5 weeks ago. One of the Italian national rallies.
Oh, is this the one that hit a porta potty?
No. That
I don't know. I saw something come up about
it was the same thing. It was spectators still die in rally because nobody understands what an apex is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at how much work the ARA puts into its spectator safety stuff, right? If that tells you how important that is, look at how much work that those guys put into spectator safety, and that'll, I think it'd blow a lot of people's mind how much goes into that too.
Well, there's a ton, and so for Group B, if anybody's curious, there's a documentary out there called Too Fast to Race, and then there's another part of it called Still Too Fast to Race. Either one of those really go into a lot of detail. But it's too late. We've been here too long.
And we're about to get another GD that showed up. Yep.
So, you know all the questions that we have. Answer us down in the comments. We'll palaver about what the next topic for the podcast is. But thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your support as always. Check out Money Shift Rally, OTC Racing on all the social medias. And until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at FlatironsTuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.